Welcome to a very special Saturday edition of Ring the Damn Bell. I have Darla Staggs on, a very, very special guest, a woman that I adore and love, a friend of mine. We originally did this a couple of days ago, but something happened. We're only about 30 seconds of the podcast recorded. So this time, because I know I let a lot of people down, we're actually doing this on both YouTube and Facebook. So more people are exposed to it. Darla, thank you so much for coming back a second time. I appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome, Kevin, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. I enjoy chatting with you, and as they say in wrestling, card is subject to change. So we had a little change the other night, and here we are today.
Absolutely. And Tanya, both of our friends, since you called me out on Facebook, here is your rematch that you wanted us to have. Because
This is
of
for you,
again.
Tanya.
So, Darla, I know that there are a lot of people who know who you are. But for those wrestling fans who are maybe really young or the older ones that lived under a rock, who is Darla Staggs?
Well, I am a huge wrestling fan. I've been a wrestling fan my entire life. My parents were both wrestling fans. Both sets of grandparents were wrestling fans. And the first match I ever attended, I was 6 months old at Kiel Auditorium with my mom and dad. And I saw Pat O'Connor beat Dick Hutton for the NWA World title. I don't know too many fans that have seen that title change, but I did. Of course, I don't remember it. I just remember the stories about it. But yeah, so that's it. My grandparents had season seats at Kiel Auditorium when I was a child, and I went with them. And back then, it was like every Friday night. And then when I got old enough, I started going with friends. I met other friends at the matches and who were fans. And then, as you know, wrestling at the Chase, you had to be 16. So when I was old enough, I started going there. And that's when I met Larry Matisick and Sam Mushnick and became friends with them. And the rest is history, as they say.
Now you had to kind of stretch the laws a little bit, if I will say, describe it that way, because again, you had to be 16, and rumors are you may or may not have had a fake ID to get into these shows. Is that correct?
Well, no, I did. I waited till I was old enough to get in the shows. Where the fake ID came in at was after I started getting to know some of the wrestlers and wanting to go to the bars afterwards
That's right.
where they hung out. Yes, I did get a fake
Yeah.
ID, and I never got caught. I was allowed to. And the funny thing is, back then I didn't drink very much. I mean, I don't drink a lot now, but we just wanted to get in and spend time with them and hang out, and that's what we did, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, this episode is titled "Not Just a Fan," and the reason why I titled it that way is, although you are a huge wrestling fan, you went beyond that, though. You got involved with an organization that helps a lot of those wrestlers, especially today, who didn't make the type of money that wrestlers are making now. Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me how you get involved in it and what's your role today.
So I guess it was about 5 years ago. I had a call from Darlene Crease, who was at the time on the executive board of the Cauliflower Alley Club. And she had been talking to Carl Lauer, who at the time was the VP, and he told her to contact me to see if I would be interested in working with their benevolent fund. And what they are, Kevin, is 501c3 organization, nonprofit, and we do help wrestlers who have been in the business if they're down on their luck for any reason. I mean, it could be medical, it could be they just need help for some reason because like you said back then they weren't making the money that the guys make today, and they didn't have benefits. They were basically on their own. So that's what we do, and we have a reunion once a year in Las Vegas, and our members come out to the reunion. We have a few money making events going on out there, and all of that money goes towards helping these guys and gals. We have two banquets. Our membership is $35 a year or $400 a lifetime. And to come to our reunion, tickets are $150. That includes all of our seminars, activities, and two banquets. And it's a lot of fun, and your money is going towards helping these people. And, I don't know, Kevin, but it's very rewarding for me to be, even though it's not my money, just to be able to talk to these people and get them the help. There's an application they have to fill out. Then I talk to them and I send it to the rest of the board because now for the last 3 years, I've been on the executive board. So I'm on the executive board, their benevolent director, and I'm also the secretary of the organization. So it's a lot of work and we're all volunteers, but we all love what we do.
Yeah, I tell you, first, let's talk about the cost to become an annual or a lifetime member. Right now, I'm an annual member. Next year, actually, I will become a lifetime member.
Cool.
But look, guys, I want to break it down to you this way. You're literally paying 10 cents a day. That's it. 10 cents a day, which equals to that 35.99 yearly membership. And this is something that I'm also very, very proud to be a part of because I am a huge fan of professional wrestling, especially back in the day growing up as a kid. And to be able to help these individuals or know that my money is going to help something that I care so much about is very rewarding. I proudly wear my CAC shirt, all t-shirt all the time. And when it comes to reunions, like you said, like Darla said, it's $150 for the tickets. But look, guys, you also get this huge discount at the extremely nice place that we all will be staying at. It's the same place that most of the activities are going to be happening. For a full week there, my wife and I only paid $300. I mean, in a place where it's much more expensive to stay. So we got that huge break. This is something that if you're a wrestling fan, you grew up on professional wrestling, or maybe you didn't grow up on professional wrestling, this is something that you still feel good about if you join. Because let's not forget that we would not have what we have today in professional wrestling if it wasn't for those legends who paved the way for all these ladies and men to be doing what they're doing today in professional wrestling. So, Darla, thank you for volunteering, for doing what you do with the Cauliflower Alley Club. I can't tell you how much I really appreciate that as a member.
Well, thank you, and you're very welcome. Like I said, I love it. And just since our last reunion last August, we have assisted with close to $80,000 to individuals.
Wow. Wow.
We're
That's
doing
awesome.
we're doing good things and better things are coming.
That's awesome. Look, if anyone would like to join or even just go read about the Cauliflower Alley Club, you can go to caulifloweralleyclub.org. There, you will have your options to become a lifetime member or a annual member, and as well as you can find all types of wrestling gear on there as well. Really, really cool organization. It really is.
And that website will also give you all the information about the reunion coming up in August and who our honorees are. Our top legend this year is going to be Mick Foley, and we're doing a roast to him on Monday night. And there's going to be, from what I understand, not only wrestling legends to roast him, but some of the top comedians from Las Vegas will be there.
Yeah, and what's crazy is it's only, I think it's like $20 a
Yes.
ticket. That's it. I mean, that
Yeah.
is so cheap
Yes.
to be able to witness this. I mean, this type of show, yeah, I am so excited about it. Monday night is one of the things that I'm really looking forward to about the trip to Vegas, as well as being able to see all of you all, everyone again. And that's what makes this trip for me so exciting, is being able to see my new family that I have been accepted to, which is so awesome. So I want to bring up a name to you, and I know we talked about her in the last interview, but I still want to talk about her again because I know she means so much to you, and that's Miss Sapphire. Um, Tell everyone about Miss Sapphire, who she was, and what did she mean to you?
Well, as most of you should know, Sapphire was a valet for Dusty Rhodes in the WWF with all those silly looking polka dots. But before she went there, she also wrestled in Missouri. She wrestled for Herb Simmons promotion, SICW. That's where she got her start. She was Princess Dark Cloud back then. She was also, wait a minute, the first female referee sanctioned in the state of Missouri. And I met her in 1974 when I actually started going to the Chase and matches with friends. And because Juanita, her real name, never met a stranger, she was very easy to become friends with. So we did a lot of traveling together. She was at my house a lot with my parents. She was at my grandparents' place. She became family to us. And there are just so many things. I do want to mention, because I've seen this posted on the internet several times, that Juanita got into the wrestling business by driving the wrestlers back and forth to the airport. That is not a true statement, because she didn't have a driver's license till later in life, right before she went to WWF. And she still didn't drive. But I want to share with you a funny story because I just find it hilarious. They were on the road. I can't remember. I think one of the guys she was with was George Steele. And I don't even remember where they were, but the guys wanted to go to the gym. And Juanita, she was not a gym person. She wanted to go to the mall. So they said, well, you drop us off at the gym and you take the car and go to the mall and be back here at such a time to pick us up. She didn't have the heart to tell him she was nervous to drive. So she drove, she went to the mall, she made it. But on the way back to the gym, she got lost. And she didn't know what else to do. So she pulled over to the side of the road and she sat there and cried till a police officer showed up. She told him who she was and what she was doing. They gave her a police escort back to the gym. And when she got there, because she was late, the guys were all standing out there waiting on her. And, if you knew Juanita, they laughed at her and they teased her about it. And she didn't care. She was with the boys. She was one of them and she loved it. But that's just one of the things. There are many things that we did together through the years. We did wrestling road trips. We also did trips for fun. One time we were at Universal Studios in Florida. They have all the characters, and this was after her stint with WWF, and there was 4 of us, and we were just walking around and we see all these characters and they were stopped taking pictures and giving autographs, and we got pictures taken with them. Well, when we walked off, we were like, I don't know, maybe 200 feet away, and we noticed she wasn't with us. And we turned around, and she's back there with all the characters getting her picture taken and autographs because some little boy recognized her, and then she had a whole bunch of fans coming up to her too. So she was just and she never met a stranger. And how she got to WWF was, of course, she was good friends with Sam Mushnick and Larry Madisick, but at the time, Larry was had started working for Vince, and so he told Larry what he was looking for, and he says, "I got the perfect person." So Larry called Juanita. They set up a photo shoot. They sent photos to Vince. She's like, "Oh, hell yes, I want to do it." They called her up. She had a meeting in Connecticut. They flew her up there, and she was hired on the spot. So that's how she got in with WWF, was through Larry Madisick.
Well, you mentioned that she was the first woman to be a referee. She was absolutely a trendsetter because when you were talking, I pulled something up on my computer because I thought I remember reading this about her and I wanted to verify. She was actually the first person in the States back when she was with SICW to participate in a men's battle royal bout.
Yes, she did that as well. I
Yeah,
had forgot about that. And if I'm not I could be wrong on this. I'd have to research it, but she may have also wrestled a bear.
I was going to get down because I thought I heard that too. But so with this men's battle royal bout, she was actually one of the winners because she was the last two left in the ring out of 15 other wrestlers. So I mean, what a resume she has of being a trendsetter for the
Yes.
first stuff. I mean that's absolutely incredible. And I thought I read somewhere as about the bear thing. I'm not able to find it right now, but I wouldn't doubt that. I mean, after the things I read about her.
I I want to say I could be wrong, but I think I remember that.
So do you know, did she ever talk about the relationship that her and Dusty Rhodes had in WWE?
Um, she didn't talk a whole lot, but I can tell you that they were friends. She loved Dusty, and she was able to meet Dusty's boys, Dustin and Cody. Cody was very young at the time. I met Dustin and Cody once, and they talked about her and told me that their family absolutely adored her, including Dusty. So I know they had a good relationship. But Dusty was another one of those kind of people I've never really heard anybody say anything negative. I think he got along with most people, but yes, they did have a good relationship.
So another person that you were very, very good friends with was Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. As we talked about on the previous podcast, and as most people who are real big wrestling fans that watch things like Dark Side of the Ring, you were on an episode of or Dark Side of the Ring for at least 45 seconds or so, although they interviewed you for about 2 hours. Um, the High Stuff Eddie Gilbert story. I want you to talk about your relationship with High Stuff Eddie Gilbert, how you met him, and also the Dark Side of the Ring. What were some of the things that they interviewed you about over those 2 hours that we didn't hear on the actual episode?
Well, I did. I told him one of the stories that I told him about Eddie was that if he was a friend of yours, there wasn't anything that he wouldn't do for you. And he had already left our area and went to New York. It was the first time he went up there for events. And I had loaned a wrestler some money. I don't want to mention the name because I'm friends with the guy's family. But anyway, he was supposed to send me the money back within a couple of weeks, and he didn't. And there was always an excuse. And when I mentioned it to Eddie one day, he wasn't very happy. He called the office, told them they wanted to know if I had proof, which I did, as it was an airplane ticket I purchased for him. And with that conversation to Eddie, I received my money back because the office paid me, which they shouldn't have, but whatever. And, he didn't have to do that for me, Kevin, but he was the kind of person that if he was your friend, there wasn't anything that he wouldn't do for you. And, that was something that I've always held on to in my heart because I really appreciated that from him. And I don't remember, so when Eddie and I first became friends, of course, he was a baby face. He was only 17 years old. And, we became friends very quickly. And I started driving to Memphis. In fact, Juanita would go with me. We'd go once a month. And so my family, they all knew about Eddie Gilbert. And several years later, when he turned heel, my grandma said to me one day, she said, Darla, I know you like that Eddie Gilbert. I don't know how you can like him. He is so mean and ornery. She said, I'm so disappointed in you. And I just looked at her and I said, well, Grandma, let me tell you this. If you don't like Eddie because he turned to be she called him bad guy. I said, that means he's doing his job very well. I said, because that's what he wants you to believe. I said, but you know what? He's still the same good guy. So I told that story, and there were stories like when he was in Kansas City, we used to go to Kansas City once a month. I used to give him haircuts when I go down there. One trip we went down there, we went to Worlds of Fun, and Eddie loved food. And this particular day, it was like every time we passed a food stand, we had to stop because he had to try their food. I've got so many pictures of him just eating different foods, It was just, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm with Eddie Gilbert, because he wasn't hot stuff back then. We were spending time with our friend Eddie Gilbert. Did I like him being a heel? Not really, because I told you before, I was a babyface girl.
Yeah,
But
he was such a
good
brilliant
at it.
heel though. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Um so did you well one you talked about he wasn't hot stuff then. He originally started wrestling just as Tommy Gilbert, I believe, and he was actually the protege of which Bob was it? Hold on a
Backlund.
sec. Bob Backlund, that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Um
when he did that, that was after he went to New York. You
okay.
know, he got the beginning of his career. I don't know who all helped train him. I know his father, Tommy, did. And
Right.
you said when he first started wrestling, he was Tommy Gilbert. Well, his name was Thomas Edward Gilbert Jr.
Right.
So when he first started working, he was Tommy Gilbert Jr., but
Junior.
it didn't stay that way very long, and he went to Eddie Gilbert, and he was known as Eddie the rest of his life.
Right.
But
And he also worked as a booker
Yes.
I mean, he was such an extremely talented man. I mean, even on the mic, he was so daggone good back then. Did you know? So, were you friends with his first wife, Terry Dykes? Were you friends with her at
I was
all?
not I was not friends with Terry. I did not know her. However, we are Facebook friends now. She sent me a Facebook friend request several years ago and I accepted, and she her posts are always very nice, but no, I never had the opportunity to meet Terry. And when Eddie got married to her, that was around when I first got married. So, once we both got married, we kind of lost touch with each other.
Yeah, and then he went on to marry, of course, Missy Hyatt. But one person I was actually a little bit shocked that when I watched Outside the Ring to find out that he was married to Deborah Massili, which we all know as Medusa. Never knew that at
You know,
all. Oh, good.
I did know that, and Deb is a friend of mine too. So we've talked several times. In fact, when they did Dark Side, they filmed her and my episode on the same day at the same place because she also lives in Florida. But they weren't married. I think maybe 3 or 4 months, but
4 months. Yep.
I know that Deb really loved him, and I think Eddie really loved her too. So we've talked about some things, but yeah, she's a good girl. I love her. I love her dearly, but I just wish that they could have stayed married, but because I think they would have been a great couple, but unfortunately, I guess it wasn't meant to be. But here's a interesting little story. So back last year at Herb's Fan Fest, and it was right in the beginning of the talking of doing the episode, and uh, Herb had Doug Gilbert come in for the Fan Fest, Eddie's brother, and Medusa was there. And uh, Doug is a very quiet person unless you really, really know him, and he doesn't have the same type of personality that Eddie did. And Medusa and him had not seen each other in years. And Doug, they were just in the talking stages of the Eddie Gilbert episode. I was trying to talk to him, other people were talking to him. So here we are, we're at this fan fest all day, and him and Deb hadn't spoke to each other at all. And I had been over at his table talking with him and his wife, and I told Doug, I said, Doug, you need to go over and talk to Deb. And he kept going, I will. So I went back. I left his table and I went back because I was actually promoting CAC and sharing a table with Deb. And I told Deb, I said, Doug said he's going to come over here and talk to you, but he's kind of quiet. And she said and I don't know if you've ever met her or not, but
Mm-mm.
she can be pretty outspoken. And she said, well, I'm just going to take care of this bullshit right now. And she went over to him and she said, Doug Gilbert, and they hugged. And I took a lot of pictures of the two of them. And it was really good. And after that, they talked several times about the episode. And I don't know if they've talked recently or not, but I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Because Doug told me, he said, well, she was my favorite sister in law. I said, well, if she was your favorite sister in law, then you need to get over there and talk to her. But that was just kind of a cool moment that I thought was great. And,
Yeah.
I stayed in touch with Eddie's family. His mom and dad, I visited with his mom and dad several times at their home. I've been to his grave. Um, and, from the first time I met the entire family, they just welcomed me like I was one of their own, and I just love that family, and I'm glad that I still have Doug and I can keep in touch with Doug.
Yeah. So I'm gonna bring up a bad memory, and I apologize. But I want to have people know exactly how much Eddie meant to you. So on February 8th, 1995 is when he passed away. Um, how did you find
Did
out?
you say February the 8th?
Yeah, well, 18th, February
18th.
18th,
Yeah.
18th, yeah, 1995. How did you find out, and what were your thoughts that went through your head, like when you found this news out?
Actually, Juanita was the one that called me.
Mm,
Because I don't know, I don't remember who contacted her, but she called and told me, and she told me, she said, Darla, I have bad news. She said, Eddie passed away in Puerto Rico. And at first I was like, no way. You're kidding me. And she said, no, she said, it's true. She said, he's passed away. Looks like it was maybe a heart attack. And so, of course, then I started crying, and she cried along with me. And, we just sat on the phone for a while and talked. And it took a few days for them to get Eddie's body back to Tennessee. I don't remember how long it was, but I couldn't even call his family in the beginning because I didn't know what to say.
mm,
And so it took me 2 or 3 days before I could even call. And I talked to Tommy, and he the whole family, they were just devastated, to lose a child at the age of 33 years old. And so, of course, and I'm a big crybaby anyway. So, of course, I cried with Tommy, and he cried, but it was just so, it was something that I never would have dreamed that I would have ever gotten that phone call about him. So
right.
it was tough.
Yeah, I know that it was a huge blow as well to all of his fans. From what my understanding is, the family believes that the heart attack was caused due to he had a serious car crash in 1983. They think that that could have had a factor in playing into
Oh,
his liver.
I think that definitely probably, and I didn't know all of the details about what happened to him in that car accident until Dark Side, when I heard Doug talking about it. And
Mhm.
Doug said that his heart was like jello. And
Wow.
I don't I don't think he ever got off over those injuries. I think that he lived in pain every single day of his life.
Right. Right.
But apparently, and then I heard, who was it? Oh gosh, Dutch Mantel said that the steering wheel like crushed
Crushed.
his chest. I can't even imagine. I did see him the summer after that accident because we had a WFIA convention in Memphis again that year. The first one was in '79. That's where I met Doug and his family, or Eddie and his family. But the summer of that accident, Eddie was still home recovering, and they had a show in Jackson, Tennessee, and he came with his mom, and I did get to see him and talk to him. He hadn't went back wrestling yet, but it was good to see him. And apparently he had a lot of facial injuries as too. That's why he wore the beard most of the time afterwards. But I can't even imagine what kind of pain he was in from that. But yeah, they've always said they thought the heart attack, and it was due to
Right.
the injury from that accident.
Yeah. Mr.
But
Herb Simmons.
he had determination. He wasn't going to give up because the doctors told him there's no way he should go back to wrestling, and he did.
Right. Right. Mr. Herb Simmons says, hello, be commented. Thank you for watching, Mr. Herb. Darla, do you have a specific memory of Eddie that you often go to make you smile or when you're thinking of him?
Mm, no, not really. I just try to think of the good times that we had when we were together. We were kids back then, and we just would do silly stuff that friends do. I can remember us going to Memphis and hanging out at the pool. And I remember Juanita, and I told you I was going to find this picture. I still got to do it. She wasn't even in the wrestling business yet. I don't even think she was working as Princess Dark Cloud yet. And she picked Eddie up over her head to throw him in the swimming pool. And, just things like that, the memories. And, so when I think about him, which is very often, especially around the date of his death and his birthday's coming up in August, I just try to think of those fun things that we used to do. Of course, they weren't long enough for us. As you get older, that slows down too. But yeah, so and then the last time I saw him was October of 1990. I never dreamed that would have been the last time I saw him.
Yeah, I can only imagine how hard how loss that was for you because I know as a fan of his how hard that was and I didn't even know the guy personally. I was just a big fan of his, so I can only imagine how difficult that must have been. Did Eddie ever discuss with you some of the things that he wasn't happy with as far as his career went? Because I know that there were a few bookers that he worked for that he didn't really care for.
No, because see, that was all after we were keeping in close touch. So
Right.
once he left, and periodically he would come back like to Kansas City or Kansas or St. Louis for a little bit, but not a real long time. So when he was doing his booking and when he was in working for Bill Watts and the other organizations, and then what was the promotion where he was with Jim Cornette for a little bit?
Oh, shoot. Was that Atlanta Championship Wrestling on TBS? Or was it I don't think
Oh,
Cornette
that was
had
Smoky Mountain. That was
Smoky
Smoke.
Mountain. Smoky Mountain. Yep.
So we weren't really keeping in touch then. So no, he never spoke to me about
Right.
those kind of things.
Yep. Well, I'm gonna bring up a name that will put a smile on your face. And I want you to tell me the first thing you think about when you hear this name, Barbara Goodish.
Oh, she is probably my dearest friend in the whole wide world. There is, I just love her. And she's one of the biggest reasons why I retired and moved to Florida.
Yeah, she's an incredible
In fact,
woman. And
I'm getting ready to meet up with her in about another hour and a half.
yep, yep. So for all the younger fans out there that may not know, Barbara Goodish was the widow of Bruiser Brody. And if that name, Bruiser Brody, you don't recognize, I highly suggest you guys go do your research and watch some videos of Bruiser Brody. He was one of the greatest personalities and people in professional wrestling. But Miss Barbara was one of the people at Fanfest 4. It was you, Miss Barbara, and Sonny, the original Sonny in professional wrestling, that really welcomed me and my wife in. And I have to tell you that, we fell in love with all three of you. And Miss Barbara is just such a kind-hearted lady. She will just talk to whomever wants to talk to her. How did you guys meet?
So when she wrote the book about Bruiser Brody with Larry Matisick, they had a book signing in St. Louis, and that was back in 2007. And of course, I was living in St. Louis at the time, so I went. And afterwards, a bunch of them were going out to dinner, and Larry invited me to go. And I had the opportunity to talk with Barbara and get to know her a little bit. And we exchanged emails because at the time we weren't on Facebook. So we would just send emails back and forth, not real often. And then they honored Frank in at Cauliflower Alley back in 2015. So she came to that. We got to hang out there, and then he was honored in Waterloo, Iowa, when she came, and then she just started going to both events every year. And Herb always has her come in to his Brody Memorial, and I'm always there for that. So we just started hanging out and at all these events and traveling to them together. And when I decided to retire, I was like, why not? Let me go to Florida a bit. So I'm in Florida with her now. She's about 30 minutes from me, and I see her very often. I already saw her once this week. I'm going to see her again tonight, maybe tomorrow. And but the funny thing is, Kevin, and I don't know that I ever told you this, I was not friends with Bruiser Brody. Not that I
Oh,
didn't like him or anything, but he was kind of a loner, and he didn't hang out in the bars, and Frank was a money saver. So, he would go back to his room, and, Barbara always talks about how he lived on green beans and tuna fish, and that's what he would eat, and he'd save his money. But I, I had met him, and the first time I met him was the first time they brought him into St. Louis, and it was at Wrestling at the Chase, and I was taking David Von Erich to the airport that day. So when David and I got in the car, he said, Darla, he said, there's somebody else that needs a ride to the airport because we're going to the same town, but we're not supposed to be seen together. So can you pull down the street and around the corner? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. So we're sitting in the car, and I'm looking out the rear view mirror, and it was the first time Frank was in St. Louis, and he was literally nuts. And he was brought in to be a heel, but the fans loved him so much. He never changed the way he wrestled, but the fans loved him, and he was never a heel in St. Louis. But this first day, so I'm looking out the rear view mirror, and I see him, and I'm like, oh my God, here comes the crazy man. And he gets to the car, and he opens up the door, and very soft spoken, he says, hi, my name's Frank. And I'm like, whoa, this is actually coming from the crazy guy. But he got in the car, he was very polite, very nice, very quiet. And that was the first time I ever met him. And, from then on out, when I'd see him or he'd see me, we'd speak. But yeah, I never was really friends with him. And that's my story about Bruiser Brody. But I love his wife dearly.
yeah, and you brought up a name, and I wanted to talk about this family here for a moment. That was Divine Eric's. How well, I know you, David, how well did you know the other binaries?
Oh my goodness. So I didn't really know them very well at all. And here's what I usually tell people because the Von Erichs were very well loved in St. Louis. Everybody loved them. I was probably, this is what I say, probably the only female in St. Louis that was not a fan of the Von Erichs.
Wow.
That's pretty rare. Um,
Right.
David and I were not real good friends, but I mean we were friends to talk to each other and hold a conversation. And Kevin and Carrie, no.
Really? Is there a particular reason?
Well, they were very popular with the girls, and I think that's what they were. Man, I shouldn't say this. I think that might have been what they were looking for, and I wasn't that girl.
Got
So
it.
I just never cared for them. But I
Okay.
hope I hope their family don't
But
see this and hate me. But that's how it was.
you are on such a small podcast that I don't think I'll be a blip on their radar for a very long time. So let's talk about today's product because it's very different from what you and I grew up on. What do you think about today's product?
Well, I don't really watch it. Um, and the reason I don't watch it, I've been to a couple of WWE shows when I was in Minnesota, and it's so weird being at them in person now. It's nothing like it was
Right,
back when I was going. You know, they're constantly changing the mats on the ring apron and stuff, and I'm like, this is just stupid. And they're the biggest thing I see that I don't like is nobody's telling stories anymore. All they want to do is their high spots and show everybody like, hey, look at me, I can do this. Well, that's fine and dandy if you can do a beautiful drop kick, but you can't do a storyline. So I
right.
think that the art of professional wrestling has been lost. I mean, there's some great talent out there. I just don't think they're being used correctly. And since I've lived in Florida, I've only been to one show, and wasn't and I it's not that I haven't gone back because I didn't care for it, because I did think there was a lot of talent at that show. It was a friend of mine that runs it. It just happens to be 3 hours away. And so
Yep,
you
yep.
know yeah, I just think it's been lost, and I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I agree because even during the times, well, during the wrestling that I grew up on, even when they were wrestling, there was a story being told in that ring. You didn't have to always depend on the storytelling of the wrestler, doing the promos to tell you what's going on. There was a story in the ring, and it's not like that anymore. It's
No.
exactly as you said. Is just who can get in their high spots. Um, I want to bring up another name, Cowboy Bob Orton, one of the greatest in my opinion. I love Cowboy Bob Orton. Um, are you friends with Cowboy?
I am friends with the cowboy. I am friends with his wife. And I'm not friends with Randy though. I've never met Randy. Darn it, I have met his other son Nathan. But yes, I am friends with Bob, and I absolutely love him.
You have to have a Cowboy Bob Orton story because he was quite a guy back in the day. From
Um,
and not in a bad way, a good way. He was very entertaining and funny.
he was very entertaining. So back then I didn't really know him when he was. I've just gotten to know him
Mhm.
in later years since he, works with Herb, and he and his wife go to CAC every year. But and Bob's kind of, I mean, you met him at the Fan Fest, and Bob is a man of very few words. He's very quiet, but very friendly. And I don't know how he ever did this, but after he retired from wrestling, he became a car salesman. And he actually, he lives in St. Louis,
Mhm.
and he actually worked with my dad at the dealership that my dad worked at. And my dad used to always tell us, "Oh, I just love that Bob Orton." He said he's such a nice guy, and he said he sells a lot of cars. So I don't know how he sold a lot of cars because Bob don't talk a lot, but apparently he did. But yeah, I love Bob and his wife.
Yeah, I was outside smoking while we were in St. Louis for Fan Fest 4, and Bob was out there, and him and I were talking a little bit and smoking. And he looked at me, he was like, "You know what make this better?" I said, "What, Mr. Bob?" He's like, "A Heineken." He
Oh,
actually said a he actually said a fucking Heineken. Yo, cracked me up. Just cracked me up. It was just the delivery of it, just out of nowhere. So yeah, such a friendly guy. Good guy. He loves his Heinies though.
oh yeah, he loves Heineken.
Yep, yep. Um, so where do you see yourself in the next 5 years within this industry that you love so much, within the Cauliflower Alley Club? Is this something you plan on doing for a long time? Is it something that you plan on kind of pulling back from? I mean, you travel a lot, you go to a lot of these events.
Well, as far as being involved with Cauliflower Alley Club, I'll be here as long as they have me. Um, you know, I don't think Brian has any thing about getting rid of me. I don't know. If you talk to him, that might be a different story. But yeah, as far as the rest of it, and the wrestlers always say once it's in your blood, it never goes away. And you know what? I'm 67 years old. I've been a fan my entire life. I'll never stop loving it. I may not like today's product, but I love this business.
Absolutely, and
I
it's
don't
people like,
I'm not planning on going anywhere.
well, I say it's people like you and Mr. Herb and so many other people within that group of individuals that keep um, the past, the greatest era in professional wrestling, in my opinion, alive. And I truly appreciate it as a fan of that era. You know, I think meeting Mr. Herb was one of the best things that's happened to me in a long time because I was reintroduced to my love of professional wrestling from back then. Again, I think that was the greatest era in professional wrestling.
Oh, I do too.
I,
Herb's a
I
pretty
miss
cool
it.
dude.
Oh, I love her.
You know
Such a
how long
great guy.
I've been friends with Herb for probably over 45 years.
Wow.
Long time.
Wow.
I
Well,
was a
real
baby.
quick. Before we end the podcast, because I know you have to meet Miss Barbara, tell me about you and Miss Hurt's relationship.
So, I first, like I said, I've known him for about 45 years. And, just always going to his shows. I don't even know how I started going to his shows, but yeah, I've been going to his shows probably close to as long as he's been having them. And then I would
Wow.
run into him, at the Keel and stuff. And, we started talking, and because he's very good friends with, or was very good friends with, Larry Matisick, and we had that in common. And my feeling is I have a very good relationship with Herb. I mean, I talk to him sometimes 2 and 3 times a week. He'll call me to ask me stuff, and I'll call him if I need to know something. And sometimes we may talk for an hour, sometimes it may be 5 minutes. And he's just a wonderful, wonderful person, one of the most honest people. Sometimes do I think he's a little bit needs to slow down? Absolutely. When he told me this year he was having Fan Fest 3, I told him, quite frankly, I said, "You're nuts." I said, "You had two, they were very successful." And I said, "I don't mean anything negative about that." I said, "But, Herb," I said, "that's a lot of hard work for you to do." And I said, you know, I just think it's time you need to stop. Well, as you can see, he didn't listen to me, which he doesn't always, but he had a successful fan fest. And, I think Herb's going to be like me. He's going to keep going until he can't do it anymore. And he's always going to be involved in this sport.
Right. And if a lot of people who may know her from the wrestling side, he's also a mayor on top of that. So he
Herb,
has all of that stuff.
Herb does everything.
He
He's
does.
the mayor. He works for the county. Oh, yeah. You know what he's doing today? He's having, and you said he commented, and I know he's already there because I saw pictures on Facebook. He's having a big wrestling card at the St. Louis International Speedway this afternoon.
Yes, he is. You're right.
He never stops.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but hey, he's super herb, I guess. But he's a great guy. I can't say enough bad things about him. And another person who I adore that I can't stop saying nice, great things about is you, Darla.
Oh, thank you,
Thank
Kevin.
you. Thank you for coming on the podcast once again to
You are
talk
so welcome.
about everything. I'm excited to see you in Vegas. We're
Yeah,
always
me too.
talking on this podcast. By the way, Herb said that you're still doing silly stuff.
That's my Herb. He always rats me out.
Oh man, give Miss Barbara Goodish our love. She's gonna be on the podcast coming soon, in the next few
I will.
weeks
Yeah,
as well.
we're going out dancing tonight.
Awesome, awesome. We'll have fun. What kind of dancing, if I may ask?
Well, we're not doing pole dancing. So, so, so her boyfriend plays in a band, the Cat
Uh-huh.
Four, and they play like the oldies. I mean, they are so good. And they're playing at an outdoor venue tonight, and it's right on the river. So it'll be pretty cool. You and Crystal need to come down, and we'll take you.
I tell you, like I said last podcast, Florida is on our radar for us to move to in about a year. So you never know.
I'll be
You
looking
never
at
know.
I'll be looking at places.
Well, hey, you said the right stuff. You said the
I'm
right
in a
stuff to us. You
I'm
never
in a
know.
50 I'm in a 55 and older community. we'll move yourself right in here. We've had like 4 friends buy a place. We're in a double wide
Mhm.
manufactured homes. We've had like 4 friends from St. Louis move down here because of us. So we'll bring you guys in too.
Well, this is the problem though. Well, one, I'll be 53 this year. I'll be
Oh,
55 soon enough. But this is the problem though. Krista, she's only 39.
that's
She is.
okay. So let me tell you here, my roommate and I, we got a good reputation with our park manager. Um,
Mhm.
and my roommate's daughter and her boyfriend, they moved in a year ago and he was 53 and she was 51 and they got accepted. So I think I could get you and Crystal uh, accepted.
Yep. By the way, she's going to kill me because she always watches a podcast afterwards. Krista,
Crystal. Oh,
Krysta.
I'm sorry. You know what? I have a sister named Crystal. Oh my gosh. What a
Everybody calls it Crystal. Everyone does.
okay. Well, I'll know
So
now.
not a big deal.
Yeah.
Krista. But you know what? I want to since you bring that up to her that you said, about the 55 plus. Because look, man, we're looking to our youngest is to be 18 years old next year and he's be done with school. And we're looking to get out of Minnesota. Not that Minnesota isn't a fine place to live, but the wintertime just
Oh,
sucks.
trust me, I know. We
Right,
did
you're
that
from
for 12
Minnesota.
years. The
Yeah,
summers are beautiful, but they just don't last long enough. Look at
right,
this. It's the middle of June and you're sitting there in a sweatshirt. No,
right.
what's
Yeah,
wrong?
I know. It's like 50 degrees here. It's the middle of June. It should be an abomination. Darla, thank you for being on again. I'm going to let you go because I know that you're looking forward to go and hang out with Barbara because I'll keep you on here for another 2 hours if you let me. So
Perfect.
love
Well,
you,
thank you
love
for
you
having me.
guys.
Love you
Yes,
guys too.
and we'll see you in August in Vegas.
Yes, you will. But we'll talk before
Absolutely.
then.
Absolutely. And fans, we will be back on at 6 o'clock to do the recap of Friday Night SmackDown. We will see you guys then. Until then, you guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Enjoy tonight, Dola. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye, Kevin.